you have to Chromecast it. Chromecast.
I think it's Chrome. I have Chrome on my phone.
Yeah, so Chrome app. Search for Chrome web. And then it'll somehow detect your phone from your TV.
Oh, okay.
Chromecast.
As far as I know.
Usually eat something.
Never.
Okay, by my watch, we're a minute after 5. So I want to welcome everybody to the June regular meeting of the Benson Board of Education. We do have a quorum with all members present. So we'll go ahead and get started. I do call this meeting to order at 5:01. We'll start, I guess I should mention that this meeting is, as always, conducted under the provisions of the Nebraska Open Meetings Act, which is posted in the back of the room. We'll start this evening with public forum. We do have a couple of folks who are interested in speaking tonight. Just a reminder on some of the ground rules of public forum. You'll have 5 minutes to share your thoughts with the board. I'll keep a timer and give you a polite reminder as to when you're approaching your time. We ask that you not address teachers or students by name for privacy reasons, and there are other policies and processes that address teacher, staff, or employment issues. And then just wanted to set an expectation that this is really the board's time to hear what you're saying. The board won't engage in asking questions or engage in discussion. That's mostly so we don't wander into territory where we're covering other topics that aren't on the published agenda and keeping in the spirit of the Open Meetings Act. But if you do have questions or need follow-up, we'll make sure that those get directed to the appropriate person so that you get that. So with that, I've got again a couple of people. I call Scott forward, and again we ask that you sit up front so we can hear you well.
I'm guessing I'm the only Scott on this.
You are the only Scott.
Yeah, that's pretty much my last name. Do I need to say my name and my address? I can't remember.
If you would, please.
Scott Searcy, 17403 Bondison in Stratford Park. I guess tonight I would love to have some answers. I understand that the way this works is that I don't get answers, I just talk to you. But I guess I would want to make a public record too. Last month when you guys rolled out the curriculum, you also rolled out the SEL program that was, in this case, written by Second Step. And I'm confused on that. I'm confused by why we think that this is relevant, why it would be approved. Someone, I'm not using names, and I'm not trying to be cagey, I'm just trying to not use names. So someone in a position of authority that knows told my wife last week, someone sitting up here, told my wife last month when this was rolled out that this was mandated by the State Board of Education. So I'm confused by that as well. I don't know everything about this. You guys certainly know more than me, but I'm under the impression that the State Board of Education can't mandate curriculum. So if they can't mandate curriculum, then why are we doing this? Well, the answer would have to be then because you guys approved it. Either that or I'm wrong and they can mandate it, or they can mandate what you teach if you want their funding. SEL, for the people in the room that don't know, social emotional learning. I mean, one of the main tenets of this is talking to our elementary school kids about their preferred pronouns. I'm not here to debate whether or not picking your preferred pronouns is actually a test to see if you're dumb enough to think you can pick your gender or whatever other side of this argument is. My question would be, how is this the point of our education system? Reading through the SEL curriculum, took me about 4 minutes to find the question objective reality taught to first graders. The point of the exercise is to get students to ignore what they see, i.e. that a square is reality, and let the teacher's instruction guide them. So the goal of it is to question their own internal beliefs and associations that a blue square that they see does not equate to a blue square, it's actually a circle. What's the point? How is this even your jobs? I talk to people all the time who are like, man, you pay crazy taxes in Bennington, but what a great school system. My son just finished his junior year. His science final was to create a license plate using an element. I'm not quite sure that we're testing his science skill, we certainly weren't, no. My son would rather play football than do school, so it's probably fortunate for him that this was the final, but I don't think that equates to a great school system and a great learning system. But apparently SEL does. So my question, I would love to hear from one of you, not tonight obviously, but at some point, if this is mandated, why do we really have to do it? Because I thought we could pick curriculum, and if we are picking it, did you approve it? Did you approve it? Did you even read it? I know some of you are about it, but I don't think all of you are. And I hope in November, we get some more people on this board that think a little bit differently. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott.
Kathy.
Good evening. My name is Kathy Fauché, 7948 North 152nd Avenue. I'm just here also to express my concern about the social emotional learning program, Second Step. I moved here in 2006 with my family, due in part to the reputation and standards of Bennington Public Schools, which I believe a lot of people here tonight, that's precisely why they moved here. So a few months ago, I started hearing from parents that they were pulling their children out of Bennington and sending them to private school. Being concerned and being a former news reporter, I could not ignore what I was hearing, and I had to look into it. I am here tonight to implore you to look into Second Step, not just to approve it because OPS uses it. Sorry, I'm a little nervous. I can all but assure you that the majority of Bennington parents would take issue with Second Step if they understood. It is an organization that deems white teachers as being inherently racist. The Committee for Children is a nonprofit organization behind Second Step. The center of their framework is diversity, equity, and inclusion. In May of 2021, the Vice President of Education and Research, Dr. Tia Kim, published a YouTube video. She's the board member of CFC, where she spoke with social emotional learning leaders. And they all agreed, SEL is not to increase a child's test score or to be better behaved. It is to center students' voices. It is not about management, and I'm quoting, it is not about management and compliance, she said. It's about advocacy rooted in a culturally responsive framework. We must see diversity, equity, inclusion, and SEL as one and the same. She stated that children are ready for the tough talks of race, and that people, white people in particular, can be inherently racist. I find this very troubling. I think kids don't need to be taught to be divisive, and I feel that's what SEL does. On the surface, many people agree that the tenets of SEL can be good life lessons for learning as traditionally taught when developed in the 1990s. Kindness, empathy, respect for others, self-regulating your emotions. But the topics and agendas of SEL and CASEL reach far beyond this. And another component to this is the surveys. I have gone out on YouTube, I have found examples of CASEL surveys administered through Second Step. They ask students questions such as, how often have you felt alone or like you don't belong at school this week? How do your parents or how do the adults talk to each other at home? They get into issues of gender identity, getting children to think about their sexual identity. And those are my basic concerns. In closing, I would like the board to research and respond to several of my concerns. Number one, will Bennington teachers be able to raise concern if they identify lessons and activities that make them uncomfortable? Number two, will teachers be required to give second step lessons that conflict with their personal or religious values? Number three, what will happen if a child discloses highly personal, confidential information during a group activity in which children are encouraged to share their feelings? Will parents be notified? How will the school handle privacy concerns? Number four, is Bennington collecting surveys from teachers to find out if they are comfortable with the program? Number five, will parents have access to the second step lessons and activities? Number six, will parents be told proactively they can opt out? Will parents have access to the surveys being administered to the children? How will the surveys be stored? Are the survey responses anonymous? I have been trying to research court cases that aren't yet public. Yet early testimony seems to indicate they are not, and they are tied to the child's social security number ID. And maybe most importantly, are there potential constitutional private right of conscience or First Amendment violations or concerns with regards to second step and the information it is collecting and what it is teaching children to share and disclose when they come to school to learn and to respect each other and to attain academic excellence from Bennington. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Is there anybody else who would like to speak in public forum this evening? Seeing none, I do want to thank Scott and Kathy for sharing. I know it's not an easy thing to do, but I assure you we do appreciate your comments, and we'll again refer them for follow-up. So we'll proceed into the consent agenda now. We have in our consent agenda this evening the approval of this evening's agenda, approval of minutes from the May 9 regular meeting, June bills, and resignations and hires for the month of June. Allison, who has bills?
Valerie,
Yes. Any feedback?
No, but just highlighting, we certainly had quite a few disbursements relative to construction, and they're big numbers in the six figures to plus on that, and also some transfers to help with cash flow in terms of some interest payments that we had. So those are big numbers right now, understandably so, to our contractors. Those were the things that floated to the top for me, Allison.
Yes, and again, we're seeing additional funds spent for contracted transportation because of the driver shortage, so we're seeing that again as well. And it looks like we got some outdoor recreational equipment for Anchor Point, so those are the two additional items.
Thanks for that context. I look for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Thank you, Albert.
Second.
Thank you, Allison. Jody, please call the roll.
Kara?
Yes.
Heather?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Allison?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Valerie?
Yes.
Motion carries. We'll proceed to reports now, kicking off with administrator reports. A reminder, please tell us who you are as you're sharing your reports. We'll start, as always, with elementary.
Hello, I am Molly O'Connor. I will be the principal at Stratford for the school year next year. Currently, I'm at Bennington Elementary. Tonight, we are showcasing elementary summer school. We've got those at two locations, Bennington Elementary and Pine Creek. We have about 240 kids approximately participating in summer school. We've got a lot of great staff, great paraprofessionals, and a lot of high school volunteers. So their theme is passport and a journey, and so they've been learning about lots of different places around the world. So it's been really fun seeing everybody around the building. Any questions? All right, thank you.
Good to see you here this evening, Sean.
Good to see everybody. My name is Sean Hoppus, the current Bennington Middle School principal. I will be moving to Bennington South Middle School for next year. Put our enrollment up there for the 2 buildings for next year. Forgot to total the Bennington South one, I apologize, it's actually 509, but it's went up a little bit in the last week. And as you scroll down, really what I want to highlight is summer school is off to a really good start for us. We've got about 40-ish kids. We had wildlife encounters out last week, which is always a fun day for students. And then we really started today, actually, with our TIP grant work. We worked on our student support curriculums and worked with Bennington Middle School and Bennington South to make sure we're collaboratively working and making sure those programs are the same, the activities will be the same, and the students will get the same opportunities. So those are just a couple highlights for us. Any questions?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Office. High school reports next.
My last high school report. So if we just look at the first bullet there, brought another trophy down. Again, happy to bring the state championship and state runner-up trophies down to our board meetings. We just keep winning those. Girls state track runner-up this year. Unbelievable weekend for our girls, really performed well. We had some school records that were broken. We actually had a young lady, Kennedy Wade, who ran the 200-meter dash, who I believe broke the state Class B 200-meter record that had been held for 25 years at the state track meet. So I wanted to recognize her. That's a pretty good feat. And quite a few of our athletes are back for next year, so excited about that. Summer activities, I bulleted those as well. Summer school has started. We are in week 2. We've already had quite a few students earn credit, quite a few students that have finished their summer school already. We have some students that are in waiting that we have plugged back into those open slots, and we'll continue to work through that over the course of June, morning and afternoon sessions. And we do have a morning session for 3.5 weeks in the month of July. We've had success the last 2 years with our July session. And so we've gotten permission from Dr. Hoagie to continue with that this summer. Questions?
Thank you. Thank you, Matt. Student Services is next.
Hi, I'm Whitney Fagan, Director of Student Services. So typically this time of the year, I share with you guys our annual English Learner Update. So it just provides you scores over the last several years, numbers that were increasing, the languages that are spoken in our district. And as you'll see over the last 5 years, we've tripled in numbers in our EL population. We also have seen quite a big influx in our birth to 3 population with EL, and that is not represented here. This is just school age numbers because that is what we report on. So we expect to keep seeing these numbers grow, and we really appreciate that the board supported adding an EL teacher to our programming next year. Any questions?
Curriculum, instruction, and assessment.
Good evening. Dr. Hoagie, Assistant Superintendent, CIA. I'm going to highlight for you our professional development plan. A lot of my report is about summer school. We have had curriculum level meetings for each department and each grade level already this summer, and teachers closed the year down, reviewed their materials, and have updated plans for the upcoming school year during those meetings. We also have a number of opportunities for teachers to grow and learn through the summer. Mr. Hoppus mentioned TIP grants. We have budgeted about $135,000 for summer work for teachers, whether it's small projects that teachers are working on to enhance the classroom learning or to enhance their own growth and development as teachers. And there's a list of opportunities that I shared in my notes. So any questions I can answer for you tonight?
Thanks, Dr. Hoagie. Dr. Hawk, highlights from the superintendent notes.
Certainly want to say thanks to all the educators, support staff, certificated staff, helping us through the school year. There was a lot of changes that occurred from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, and we couldn't do it without the staff that we have. And certainly the community, their flexibility to work with us throughout the year. As you can see, we are anticipating about 300 more students, about 290 coming into next school year. We estimate about 4,090. Right now, we're at 3,934. As you can hear, the administrators are looking at that. We'll have a better picture, better number after July 1 turnover for our database. And I anticipate we'll be closer to that 490 mark as opposed to none. We have hit that several years in a row. Any other questions?
I believe that's it for reports. On to committee reports. I believe we do have a report from the curriculum committee. Who would like to cover that?
We will. So we did communicate virtually around some additional urgent needs that administration brought to the committee. Appreciate, as always, very thorough explanations around some of that. You can see we do have space in the budget about adding these, and they will be up for approval later in the agenda. Notably, a couple of FTE teachers, which again is, not terribly surprising given that we're opening the 2 buildings. But I appreciate the initial conservative approach about how we call these new educators, but these are needs that they help us know in order to, particularly in the middle school, which is phys ed and some other ones there. So we will have conversation on that as they will be coming up for board approval here shortly.
As far as building and finance, technically members of the building and finance committee met as part of the construction management or risk selection committee. Met several times, and we've got agenda later in the meeting covering those topics. And then one policy committee item, they did want to report that the board received a report from the state auditor's office regarding an anonymous complaint received some months ago. The complaint wasn't specified, but the auditor asked for information relating to some transactions in the fourth quarter of 2020. The auditor had some feedback for the board on making sure that receipts for all transactions are collected, making sure the tax exempt status for the district is always adhered to when teachers are kind of making retail purchases, and making sure we had timely posting of financials in the newspaper of record. The auditor's office didn't recommend any process changes there, but the district had identified some minor issues in those areas related to employee training that we corrected some time ago. The auditor's office also recommended that the board review its policy around meals for staff and volunteers. We've identified an opportunity to shore up policy in that area. And so the policy committee will be doing that work. Usually this time of year, after the state legislature has closed its session, there are a number of policies the board needs to review anyway to make sure that we're compliant with new statutes or statutory changes. So we'll be looking to have those policies, and there's one related to meals at the July meeting, I believe is the target.
That's correct.
So, any questions on any of the committee reports? Then we'll proceed to Mr. Bird and the construction report.
Good evening. Quickly going through the projects that we're currently working on. Weather has been hitting us off and on. It's currently very hot out. So we are in the middle school. We are working on interior finishes and punch lists. which would be the closeout areas for the academic wings. Looking for anything that needs to meet current contract documents and the finishes. The gym work is nearly complete. Wood flooring is down. Athletic equipment is up. We're currently going to be striping that in the next week or two. Parking lots, drives are all poured. We are currently working on some grading and trying to get down some seed, sod, and getting the sprinkler systems up and working because of heat. The elementary school is working on its finishes. Carpet is currently complete as of last Friday. Tile work is complete. They're throwing in ceilings and dropping ceiling pads as the building gets climatized so that the humidity is brought out of the building. They've got a couple of storefront windows and storefront doors at the main entries that need to be put in. They are supposed to be here next week to have everything closed out. Few delivery issues that they're working through right now so that we can have things ready for the start of school. High school improvements, they've finished up. We're doing punch lists on the concession stand in that area, and they've started to tear out and replace the parent drop-off drive. And the road is complete, not open to the public, please do not drive on it. But they're backfilling the curves, and they'll be looking for sidewalks and plant trees here shortly. Any questions?
My apologies are going through in the high school? High
Yes,
school stadium?
yes.
Did you update on that?
Yes, that's the area that is currently complete with concession stand areas. They're waiting for, I think, a little bit of tile to finish up a couple misplaced items. And then the parent drop-off drive is in process. So working for future concrete.
And not part of your project, but 168th Street.
168th Street is in process to be torn up. We have actually looked at Rachel Snowden Drive as well. There is going to be some tear out for that to put in a turning lane. I actually have been talking to those homeowners, which is very exciting. Jobs to do. But that work is currently planned as far as I've been told to still be done here for the start.
My apologies to the public, there's quite a few pictures here, but.
I tried to find the prettiest ones.
Yeah.
Terrell down in the middle school.
Elementary project.
Yes.
Are we working to we are behind.
We are.
Okay, and are we working to, I hate to say catch up, but get the project completed in a timely manner?
Yes, the contractor has fallen behind on that one due to some delivery issues and basically some manpower. They have started to work extra hours and weekends to try to make that up. Again, there are a few things that they're still working through. Not that you're concerned about it, but like the lockers are about a month late. They're going to be here in the middle of July. Still, everything is planned on being there for the start of school. However, they are behind. We're still looking at that probably good 30 to 45 days behind on the completion.
And how does that affect us getting in the building with our staff? Do we have a plan for how we're gonna do that? I appreciate
yes
the
and
effort
no
that's
to the answer to those. So yes, it does greatly affect our staff, which the contractor has been told, because the contractor cannot hand it to us the day before school and expect us to be ready in 24 hours. So there are liquidated damages. We have started the process for that. Nobody wants to complete that process. So we're asking the contractor to do everything in their power to turn it over to us as soon as possible.
Contractor is also coordinating, we've been trying to look to coordinate moving certain areas to try to let the staff into the academic wing so they can start moving into rooms, talking with the district, basically to hypothetically, it's Jeremy who has put together all the chairs and move them around, which they're definitely contracted. But we're working on that, getting like dock ready, getting shipments in and moving those around. That is, we've had that conversation, we've started moving that forward too.
So what is the estimated completion date now?
I have to relook at because it changes day by day, but I believe we're looking at a substantial completion date of the start of July. But then there will be a period of time where they'll have to do some finishes, and just like punch list items, some carpet repair, paint touch-ups, and that. The goal is to be done by the middle of July. So that gives the district a good month to move in. I know it's not what a contractual date was, and we have let the contractor know his contract did state or that.
And it's just the elementary, correct?
Just the elementary. Middle school is actually running very well.
However, the middle school date is the middle of July as well.
Yes.
And so trying to tell one contractor that we can't be two places at once sometimes falls on deaf ears.
Little different topic while we're waiting for the black and blue screens to resolve.
Right.
Some time ago, we were pursuing a stoplight at the 168th, the intersection with current middle school. I've not been down 168th lately due to the road closure. But could you update us on the status of that stoplight installation?
No. So I would have to get with the county. The county is installing that. And I will make that connection this week and get that out to them.
Thank you.
So I do not.
Yeah, those are up. There are wires strung, there's just no lights yet.
Yeah.
That's it.
I do not know possibilities of turning that on, so I will have to get that.
Because I have heard rumors of activity. I was hoping it was the long-awaited stoplight.
Sorry about trying to do two things at once.
You're good.
Looks like that was just enough time to get back online. So, any other questions for Mr. Bird?
Thank you.
Thank you. That takes us to our coordinator report.
We're suggesting that we wait until in the meeting, coordinator report and the update for facilities are one and the same.
Proposal accepted. Our spotlight report this evening is on activities, so an annual update and recap.
All right. Thank you, sir.
All right, my name is Chris Kessel, I'm the Activities Director at the high school. I have the distinct privilege of working with our athletes and our students involved in activities, which in our opinion plays a pretty essential role in the educational process and in the enrichment process of the high school experience. So here tonight to tell you just a little bit about our year and maybe some things about where we're going. So thank you for having me here. Everybody likes pictures, so I do pictures. All right, so I always start off with participation rates. We have the rates there on the left side from last year. We did see a little bit of a drop in terms of unique student participation. And you can see, last year 631 students uniquely participated, so we don't double count them. This year 613 participated in something. We do see a drop there on some level, as our school grows. If we don't add sports, we don't add levels, just by general mathematics, that participation rate is going to go down slightly. And so I do believe that's part of it. When we do look at the number of students that are double counted, that number reaches into the low thousands, like 1,200. And so there is that element of it too. So it is possible, if I'm speculating, that that rate went down a little bit because we're looking at unique student participation and we're not double counting that as well. But you can see our participation rates there throughout the course of the year. Still, I would argue, really high. 2 out of every 3 students at Bennington High School participates in some activity, which I think, again, studies show is going to increase their success and their viability in school. If we look at the numbers per program for the fall, the winter, and the spring, we do have on the left would be the current number, the number in parentheses would be last year's number. And so we do see a number of our programs holding steady or growing. And you can see that. And then when we look at our activities, very similar trends. So again, it's not as if we see programs dropping off steeply by any stretch. It's in large part staying the same or growing in the case of many of our sports or activities. As we look at our accomplishments for the year, they are numerous. As I tell our stakeholders and our coaches on a regular basis, I mean, if we sought to recognize every single achievement from every single one of our students, we do not have the time to do that. Recognition just can't be a competition at Bennington High School because we have just too much success. We do our best, and these are some of the highlights or some accomplishments that I wanted to highlight. You do see we had 243 academic all-AMC performers. That's 3.5 GPA or higher in 11th and 12th graders. I tried to kind of square the circle on why that's so much higher than last year, and I think it's because I included the EMC activities that they awarded this year, and I don't think I did that last year. So I'd like to take all the credit for that big increase, but I don't think I can. We saw 42 out of 46 possible academic all-state performers this year. So that's 3.7 or higher juniors or seniors, and you can only pick 2 per sport. So when you see 42 out of 46, that's pretty extensive and shows the job I think our coaches are doing to use that to build academic success. In competition, we won 6 district titles this year in softball, football, boys basketball, wrestling, girls soccer, and boys soccer. 5 state championships, football, wrestling. We won the duals tournament and the individual tournament. And in dance, we won pom and hip hop this year for Class B. So just very successful on a state level, which is in large part due to our coaches and our athletes. And we just had a very, very talented and hardworking senior class this year. Had 2 state runner-ups as well in girls cross country and girls track and field. Again, the success was broad-based this year. And 9 of our teams qualified for state championship competition, right? You can, in certain sports, you can qualify for a state championship without winning a district title. So for cross country, for instance, the top 3 teams go to state. So there's some of that as well. Thus the discrepancy between 6 district titles and 9 teams qualifying for state. We finished 3rd in the all activities cut point standings. So for those that don't know, the NSAA assigns a point value to your finish in the season for their activities. And generally speaking, you do not get any points unless you go to state and compete at state. And then the farther you advance, the more points you receive for that. And we finished 3rd in the Class B standings this year out of all the Class B schools in Nebraska for our boys and girls NSAA performances. Other accomplishments, we did have 4 12-sport athletes this year. I spoke earlier to the not counting twice. We do preach a multi-sport philosophy at Bennington High School, and it is something we really believe in. And we did have 4 athletes, 1 girl and 3 boys that they played in the sport each season they were in high school, and obviously made the varsity teams their senior years. We had 10 state speech qualifiers in 5 different events this year. We had 9 all-state choir and band members as well. We had 13 all-state first team honorees. We had some second team honorees too, so that number could be higher. We had 7 individual state champions, 6 in wrestling and 1 in track and field, as Dr. Blumenkamp alluded to. We had the first ever NSAA girls state wrestling champion, Macy Peacher. She's a freshman, so hopefully she'll be looking for more. And if you've never been to the state wrestling tournament, they have multiple mats going at once. And so she was the first one to win because she pinned her opponent in about 50 seconds, which in my opinion makes her the first ever. I guess you could say she's tied with 3 others, but I thought she was the first, so that's awesome. And we had among the largest unified bowling and unified track teams in the state. So all accomplishments there that I think we should highlight and celebrate. As far as current and future topics, have quite a few, budgets and funding, just in general. After the COVID kind of year and how that went, district allocation to each program that we have did increase this year. And in my opinion, all opinions were all programs were funded at an equitable and appropriate level this year, to provide a great experience for our students, which ultimately is the goal. As far as Booster Club funding, I kind of go back about 16 months. So since the 1st of January 2021, you can see the Booster Club has chosen and voted to provide that level of funding for our athletes. So you can kind of see them divided by boys and girls programs. Some examples of some things that have been purchased: boys and girls basketball travel gear, girls soccer, winter jackets, and track and field, a timing system where you can tell how fast somebody's moving and they go through the finish line, and discus and shot carts, things that are pretty indispensable for what we do. So we thank the Booster Club for their as far as staffing goes, I'm recommending that we do hire a second full-time trainer as we move forward. That position could potentially work some middle school events as well. The current trainer can work 3 nights a week per our agreement. Coach Saunders is retiring for being our girls golf coach and also being our part-time trainer. She covered 62 events this past year. If we don't get that position filled, that's just the bare minimum that wouldn't be covered. I think the other things that come into play with that is, Ms. LeBombard has to go to baseball to work a baseball game that starts at 4:30. There's nobody in our training room necessarily to service our athletes at that time and to help our athletes if they need treatment or need something like that. So as we grow and then as we move into a new high school, I think it's prudent to at least explore this option. Obviously, growth, the coming split between the middle and the high schools, just from a policy perspective, what does that look like? What do we look for boundaries? And how do we work with families and to make sure that that's an equitable process. Our move to Class A is still, I think, projected for 2024 and 25. You will see some changes in scheduling when that occurs. We're not planning on being Class A for more than 2 or 4 years. So as the high school split, we would be coming back down to B. And so that leaves us with some interesting options about scheduling. One school of thought says you blow up all your schedules and you play a total Class A schedule. That's easier said than done when you're not joining a Class A conference. More than likely, we'll stay a part of the Eastern Midlands Conference, which means we need to honor our schedules with Class Bs as we play Elkhorn North, Norris, etc. So if we keep those parts of the schedules built in, we will try to fill in Class A from there. But you're likely to see for a couple of years a hybrid schedule, assuming that Class A schools, are willing to play us, which is no guarantee. And again, that number for 3-year enrollment, grades 9 through 11, is 850, and so we're rapidly approaching that number. Other future topics, girls wrestling, the continued growth of that program. What does it look like? Right now, we kind of have a hybrid program with the boys program. We had 6 girls wrestlers this year. As that program continues to grow, we need a separation. What does that look like? Track resurfacing. That is a contract that I was working on in the early fall. We had hoped that project would begin on the 23rd of May, as they told us, but as we are all coming to be much aware of, supply problems are imminent. Right now, we do not know exactly when we will have the surface to do that project. It may be this time next year when they actually get to that point. So we're working with the contractor on making sure that price stays the same and doesn't. We do have a video board installation project coming for the main gymnasium. The Booster Club has shared that expense with the district. And the ship date for that right now is conveniently timed at August 10th. So that is awesome. Some questions, that I have, the curriculum implications, kind of where does this fit in terms of helping our students, the technology piece and gaining some skills that way, I think is important. So working through that is something that I'm going to be doing this summer. Are we looking at student workers to kind of work that? Because usually it's more than one person that works a video board, compared to our normal operation in the past or our previous operation. You know, if you've been and seen schools that have these boards, essentially you have, I guess, mini films, if you want to call them that, and walkout music and these types of things. Who films that? How does that work? I don't have much history with that sort of cinematography, but I can learn if I need to. But that's kind of one of the things we're exploring this summer as well. And then training for long-time workers, because we rely on the willingness of our teachers to work those events. And I certainly don't want to scare them off with technology that's different or what have you. So making sure that we can train and onboard those individuals, I think, is important. Other topics that are always on the table: officials and coaches retention. Trying to make sure that we keep good officials and we keep good coaches. Coaching is more complicated now and more time consuming and maybe more high pressure than it's ever been at the high school level. And so, how do we take some of that pressure off of those coaches, or make sure that that's enjoyment they get out of it is worth their time in being there. Obviously, we are always looking at the potential of addition for more sports and activities. How can we provide the types of sports and activities that our students want when they come to the high school? So what are those? And so obviously those have implications for supervision and funding and our facility, just how much space we have. Okay. As we look at other topics, kind of the grab bag here, Coke Tennis Center will likely not be available to our girls tennis program for much longer, possibly spring 2023, which would put us in a real bind. But we are working with the city to try to make sure that is still available for our girls tennis program. But as you bring in 2 new OPS schools into that mix where you're already competing for courts, that makes it tough. And there are some rumblings that the city of Omaha is more interested in helping OPS schools than it is. Well, they'll do that first and then move on to the schools in the suburban areas. Pole vault and high jump pits, our coaches indicate we'll need to replace those within 5 years. Those can be very pricey, $10,000, $15,000, $20,000. Have heard from some of our stakeholders about the possibility of playing some makeup varsity contests on Wednesdays, particularly in the spring when you talk about baseball, and in the fall when you talk about softball. Games get canceled because of weather. Finding replacement dates for those contests can be very difficult. And it's important for our coaches and our players to get to play every game on their schedule if possible. And so looking at maybe the possibility of doing that in conjunction with other administration. If you would look to make up a varsity contest, if it was maybe canceled on a Monday, on a Wednesday, maybe it would look at starting at 4:30 p.m. and hopefully being done by 6:30 p.m. Typically, for those that don't know, we don't schedule contests on Wednesdays. That is viewed traditionally as a family night, certainly something we want to honor. But also trying to listen to some of the feedback we've gotten from community members about making sure we get our schedules in. Looking to increase supervision at all contests. The fact is our numbers are growing, and as those numbers grow and more people come to our events, it becomes difficult for one administrator to sometimes handle students, officials, what's going on the field, issues potentially at the gate, and then also potentially concerns from patrons that may not like the way the game is being officiated. So those are all things that we're looking to look at. Traditionally, we've had usually one administrator at most events. I'd like to increase that number. The board did vote to help us with athletic aids, and so that is something that can help us at varsity events. And traditionally, you see better fan behavior and sportsmanship when you have more supervision. I can't be in multiple places at once, but if I do have some assistance, that presence is helpful. Okay, and just some behavior that you do see from fans, grading and officials from the stands, negative interactions between different schools and fans. Unfortunately, I did have to sit between some fans at a game this year and just sit. It was interesting. So while I'm doing that, I can't be elsewhere. So if we can increase some supervision to increase some flexibility in those circumstances, I think that's important. And the last thing I'll leave you with is just Tuesday, the 18th of April is our track meet. Our track invite has 13 or 14 teams that come. It's a very large event. I know I've talked to Dr. Blumenkamp about the possibility of maybe having our early out on Tuesday instead of Wednesday with parking and other considerations. it would help us. If it can happen. It's a very large event. And I think that's about what I got. Some awesome pictures of the year. Again, great year. Thank you for your support, and I'll take any questions if you have. Yeah. Yes.
Thank you for all of this. I appreciate the detail and coverage of all activities. I'd just like to acknowledge that while the district honors Wednesday evenings for families, that is a bonus that we try and do as a good community. And I'm concerned about the fact that we have done that as a district since time began, I wish. But because we're doing that, we're opening up our facilities for other people to not do that. And I see that as a problem. Not sure of any solution, but just want to thank you for honoring that.
Absolutely. Well, and you know, it is something we want to honor. And even from my perspective, selfishly, it is nice to have a night where I know that I don't have to be on supervision. So, absolutely. Any other questions?
Not a question, but I mean, I guess it goes without saying, but I'll say it anyway, what a fun year it was. And just as a fan and a parent, and certainly as a board member, and just big congratulations to student athletes and all those who competed in the arts and athletics, and to their coaches and educators, because there was an awful lot to celebrate. It was a lot of fun, so congrats.
Thank you. It was a great year, lots of fun, and lots of work went into this far before I was ever in the position. So,
Well, Mr. Kessel, thank you. I think our last report this evening is an update on
Continue with their
middle school.
Middle school activities.
Oh, sorry. Very, very sorry.
We're the high school fund system.
I must have missed, I didn't pull it up in my review, so I assumed it. There you go.
Matt Wilson, I'm the Assistant Principal Activities Director at the current middle school. I'll continue in that position next year. And Mr. Hasselbeck will be going over to the new building, doing athletics, doing the same role as that new building. Right there. So this year at the middle school, those are all the sports that we offer. You can see what our participation was like. You can look at a sport like volleyball where it says 38 participated. The middle school volleyball is a cut sport because we had 100 students try out for volleyball. So if you below that, of that 100 to 110, those that didn't make it, we had 44 that stayed with us and did intramurals with us. At the middle school level, if we do cuts in a sport, volleyball, basketball, we want to make sure that there is an intramural program. So our big thing is we want kids involved. So we want to make sure if we are making cuts, we have something provided for them to do if they're not on that competitive team that's going and competing against the other EMC schools. Football continues to be our biggest sport, along with track and field. You can see at the bottom there. The split of middle schools comes at a good time to get more kids involved, especially with track and field. The 173 kids, as you can imagine, is not the easiest to do with a practice. So if we can knock those numbers down at both buildings at that 80 to 90 range, we can get kids even more involved in those track and field events. Thinking of doing 2, 3, 4 events at the meets rather than kind of shoehorning, hey, you do this one event or 2 events, but we haven't had a lot of time to practice. So that'll help us a lot in those sports. And they've talked a little, we've had a few ADs reach out with girls wrestling being sanctioned at the high school level, asking if we're looking at the middle school level. Right now, wrestling is a winter sport. We started in January, runs concurrently with girls basketball. They're looking at, some schools are doing, where they're gonna do girls wrestling before we go out on winter break, kind of alongside when boys basketball is going on. This time in the EMC, we haven't made that push yet. Our numbers have been hit or miss. This year, we did not have any girls wrestling. 2 years ago, we had 6 girls wrestling. So I think as our numbers start to increase, that'll be something we look further into. But at the beginning of the year, we really push middle school kids to get involved in something. Athletics, activities. We want you involved in participating. The more you're involved in those after-school activities, better we find that their middle school experience is. So our clubs that we offer, our biggest by far fan favorite is our cooking club. Point that Miss Diamond kind of has to section up. Like Mondays is going to be blue group for 6th grade because we have so many kids that want to do it in a limited space. So splitting into 2 buildings and having cooking club in both will allow more students, even more students to get involved in that. Fitness club is another one of our bigger ones. That one, it depends on the season. If kids are in football, they're not going to fitness club usually. Football season ends, then they start going to fitness club. Our big challenge is going to be making sure that we're offering similar opportunities at both buildings. We want both buildings to have kind of their own identity form out of this, but we want to make sure we're offering similar opportunities. So our challenge is going to be making sure that we have club supervisors at both buildings so that we're offering those same opportunities for kids. So kind of updates are coming up, splitting into 2 schools. It's kind of our dry run as we approach needing a second high school. We get to kind of work some kinks out. We have some debate over, does the new middle school do a new logo, new colors? We decided both schools, since they're feeding into the high school, they're both going to be Badgers when they leave that middle school. We wanted to keep that the same. So as we open up this new building, our jerseys that we're getting are going to be very similar in color and look to them. We want to make a big deal out of when we do go to compete against each other in these sports, involving the high school with it. Talking with Coach Lenhart, he has mentioned wanting to do kind of a 8th grade football game at the stadium, and when the game's over, inviting the boys to stick around and watch practice afterwards. And kind of that motto, hey, you're both coming to the high school next year, you're going to be Badgers and being teammates again. So we want to make sure we're doing that with all sports. All sports, we will compete against each other at some point during the season, so we will make sure we're doing things involving the high school with that with us as well. There will be that stadium at Bennington South, so making sure we're making the best use of that. Our football teams, our track and field teams will be competing on there, but we still want to give those kids the opportunity of playing at the high school field when we get those chances. We're currently working through with Lou Sporting Goods of getting jerseys, equipment, and everything we need for this next season. Hopefully supply chain won't be a huge issue. Right now, football helmets is kind of the outlier where it's a struggle to get those. We also want to look at how we are really promoting at the beginning of the year, getting kids involved. How are we getting that message out about what our clubs are, what our activities are, and really promoting, if you don't see a club out there that you really want to have, here's the process to go through to get that club started. Right now, we're around 60% of our students are involved in something. We definitely want to increase that number. And again, keeping clubs similar in both buildings. Obviously, as we go on, each building is going to have their own identity and their own things. That a kid may start a club at one building and it takes off, and maybe it's not as popular in the other. But we do want to make sure we're giving kids similar opportunities in both of those. So it'll just be interesting how this next year unfolds with our numbers. The one I'm most concerned about is girls basketball. So our numbers, making sure we have enough at both schools to have 2 teams at both buildings. So we're not looking at combining next year. Our other sports look like they should be good to go for those. Those are some of our challenges we look for, but there's going to be good and bad with it, with splitting, but a lot of good that's going to come out of getting more kids involved and giving them more opportunities. Any questions on middle school athletics activities?
I know the big question with middle schoolers are the 2 teams going to play each other.
Yeah, so we've got our schedules pretty much set. So every sport, yes, they will compete against each other at some point during that season. So it should be a lot of fun when that happens. There are already kids at the end of the year debating on what's going to happen in the basketball season. And this is why we're going to win. This is why they're going to win. It'll be interesting.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson, thank you. I appreciate you stopping me from moving on. That was a report worth having. And next year, there will be 2 people to remind me that. Not forget. Oh, and did I miss something from
I believe I did.
a previous report? So We've not left the reports section, so we'll backtrack to another update from the construction report, Dr. Hawk.
Yes, asked by the board, was asked by the board to update where we're at with construction on the Title IX decree. As you can see, quite a few projects have been completed. We do have some remaining. One along the theme of shipping concerns would be the seating, the bleachers. And they are, at this point in time, I believe about 12 weeks out. And so we'll probably be into the season, hopefully, right at the beginning of the season to get those in. But as you can see, a lot of this was done with the bond issue. And with the bond issue and some of the other things that are outstanding, we're looking at about 1.7 million. So the board wanted that update. This all follows along the lines of the decree.
Any questions there?
Just a couple concerns, if you don't mind, on that, since that was brought up. Our softball team, summer team practices down there. I know there's been some cleaning issues, and I'll even say some construction pieces laying around, some metal, some whatever. I'm just guessing that stuff will be cleaned up yet when concessions is all done and trash kind of picked up, and it just looked a little rough around down there in certain places. So just kind of making sure that stuff's getting fixed up a little bit.
Certainly, we'll take a look at it tomorrow and see what we can do.
Cool, thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Hawk. I think in your defense, the technical difficulty manifested at the end of the one construction report. So thank you for bringing us back to that. Now, our recap of strategic plan for the year, Dr. Hoodie.
Just to overall give you an update of where we started with our plan, we established these goals back in 2013-14 with groups of community members, teachers, parents, and administrators. Students were also part of that. We developed 4 goals annually. They've been reaffirmed by the Board of Education, and monthly we report progress on those. The strategic plan is used to drive our continuous improvement. So goal number 1 is our 21st century skills that we're focused on. We have 4 objectives since the beginning of this process. The work we have covered this year really has focused on skill development and reporting to parents on how we're doing on that skill development. We've done some additional professional development for teachers. We had consultant Sue Beers in and shared a number of resources for teachers to help them in the classroom and moving that forward. We've also expanded the CTE, that's career and technical educational courses in the high school that fits right into those skill development areas. And we've expanded field trips as part of the CTE courses so that kids can see skills in action at work. Future things that we're still working on are 21st century skills, actually focusing on those skills so that we can continue to teach them, so that teachers specifically and intentionally teach those skills and students can demonstrate those. We're still working so that we have both feedback from teachers and students in these areas so that we can do some cross measuring and see how if we're seeing the same thing from both perspectives. So overall, we're still working on those, refining that reporting system. Goal number 2 is our personalized learning area. We have 4 objectives in that area as well. Our current focus this year was really on differentiation. It is a multifaceted area of education, but we really honed in on that single area. Our goal this year was really to help teachers understand what individualizing work for students versus differentiating for students and personalizing. So it's a little bit of each as we go into those. but we want to impact all kids and make sure that we really address the needs of each individual student. We're working with teachers to be able to focus that work and support teachers in those areas as we go. So we want to make sure that we have differentiation as just a standard piece for each student as we move forward. Goal number 3 is our community collaboration and communication. We have updated and done some branding things. We have 3 objectives through this goal, and we continue to work on this. Our website has been updated, and so we highlighted that this year. Future work, we have a brand new communications coordinator who came on this week. She will be helping us to develop a communications plan as we move forward, and then being able to evaluate how this plan works to reach all of our public. Goal number 4 is our social emotional learning to meet those needs for all our students. We have 3 objectives in that area. With that, we have adopted SEL curriculum materials. We have updated our multicultural plan with community assistance this year. We had over 80 people as part of our multicultural committee during the district and through last year, and finalized that work this fall. We also are training our staff in diversity, equity, and inclusion. Title IX requires in that federal law that we train our staff to recognize discrimination and not to discriminate against any students within our schools or across our district. And so that's why we are training staff in what diversity, equity, and inclusion means, because we need to do that in order to meet Title IX requirements. Future work, we're going to work with all of our staff and make sure that we have a great plan in place for our implementation of our SEL curriculum and how we can communicate that out to parents and make sure that they are fully aware of what's happening in the classroom each week with students. We'll continue to work with our staff on professional learning opportunities and really work on great transparency and reporting to our community of what's happening with multicultural education as well. So that gives you an update on where we are for this school year and the work we have accomplished. Any questions I can answer for you?
We review one of those goals every month. Appreciate the committee's work this year and for the recap here. Thank you. I believe that concludes our reports, and we will move to unfinished business now and a consideration of construction change orders. Dr. Hawk, can you provide background information, please?
Yes, we have one this evening. It is turning lanes around Rachel Snowden Drive. This is the work that Mr. Bird was talking about and talking to homeowners as well. This is per city code.
I move to approve the construction change order. It doesn't have a number, but I move to approve the construction item listed for a project change order for a cost of $60,281.65.
Second.
Thank you, Allison. Is there discussion on this item?
What is it we're actually
Widening
widening?
Rachel Snowden Road.
Oh, okay, just to the turn lane, yeah.
And for those, Rachel Snowden Road is more or less in the subdivision of Stratford Park. It is on the northern edge.
So the people that bought it because we're maybe blocking their driveways, I'm guessing?
Well, we're doing that, but we're also with the easements going into the driveways and their front yard.
Other discussion? Jody, please call the roll.
Allison?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Valerie?
Yes.
Kara?
Yes.
Heather?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes. Motion carries. Now we will discuss and consider summer maintenance and repair and get our deferred coordinators report.
I would ask that Mr. Edens come forward.
Good evening.
It's good anticipation.
So I'm Jeremy Edens, Coordinator of Facilities and Transportation. So very busy summer. Looks like it's gonna be really busy in July, but we'll get through it. So summer bond projects, I kind of keep an eye on those and keep the superintendent updated and DLRs as well. So we keep an eye on the high school, Stratford Elementary, Middle School number 2, and then Snowden 171st Street project. Some of the summer work that we got going on, I just listed some of the bigger items. Like to refresh the landscape and the mulch beds around here at the Elementary. Pine Creek, we are ordering quite a bit of cabinets, and we're also converting the stage into a permanent music room. That bid number I have up there is incorrect. It's actually about $36,000 for that, for those partitions that convert that room into a permanent music room. But our principal at Pine Creek is doing a fantastic job with utilizing the spaces, so we had to make some investments in furniture to make those spaces work, so that we can continue educating students in that building. Anchor Point really needs some sod. Trying to get a vendor out there, and I'll hopefully have some numbers that I can present here soon. Bennington Middle School, we have a retaining wall on the east side that is starting to fail. So I made contact with the original builder, and they're gonna come out at a significant discount, repair that retaining wall, and then hopefully take care of the heaving that's happening in front of that retaining wall. We're gonna rip out that concrete, find out where this is draining to, and if it's not connected properly, they're gonna connect that for us. So the bid we got for that is $8,575. Bennington Elementary would also really like some sod around the basketball court. Those areas got really abused. Probably gonna do some drainage improvement in that area as well to help with the puddling. So Bennington High School, of course, our chiller replacement that was supposed to happen this summer got moved to the fall because of supply chain issues. I'm gonna be working with a landscaper to kind of put a new mulch bed / bush barrier along that north parking lot along the west side. But I see a lot of students just jumping the curb and driving through straight on 168th Street. So we're gonna put a little barrier and also improve the aesthetics of the area. Some of the stuff that we do at all buildings over the summer is, we replace mulch, we do weed eating, we do weed control, replace plants as needed. We touch up throughout the buildings, striping in parking lots, aerate, overseed, and then work orders that we get from staff. So this year we got 135 total work orders from staff. 35 of those are already completed as of the 10th. And then we work with our partners for our summer cleaning. Summer cleaning over the summer, school carpet extraction, interior and exterior glass, high dusting, deep cleaning, stripping and waxing of the VCT tile at the high school and some of the elementary schools, buffing the terrazzo in our 2 secondary schools, and then dusting window coverings and working with food services to get the kitchens deep cleaned and the hoods cleaned in that respect. Do you have any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Edens. That concludes our unfinished business, and we'll start into a full agenda on new business. Just to set some expectations, we've got 5 items that we need to consider and take action on this evening, which takes us through letter E on the agenda. If we reach that point, we'll take a break and clear the minds and anything else that needs to be cleared as we pursue our discussion items in a workshop format here to conclude the meeting this evening. So first item of new business is action regarding the findings and recommendations of the selection committee for the construction manager at risk proposal for the new high school facility. Dr. Hawk, are you carrying the water on this? Or?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
We have gone through, starting in March, we added a policy for construction management risk. This is outlined in state statute for the most part. We did advertise for such work to be done. We received 6 bids, all meeting the specifications. The committee then met and narrowed that down to 3, which we then invited those 3 companies to make a presentation to the Construction Management at Risk Committee. Please keep in mind that Construction Management at Risk Committee is made up of 3 board members, 2 administrators, 1 person from the community that is outside of construction, and 1 person from the community that has construction knowledge. The legal counsel, Derek Aldridge, was along as well, and we also had 1 member from DLR, which was a part of that committee, and that was Curtis Johnson. We listened to the 3 presentations over a couple of weeks ago. From that, we had a rubric or a criteria evaluation, which added up to 100 points if somebody received all. And from that, we made a selection and ranked them based on the points. All committee members voted individually, points were added in total, and we came up with Hausman Construction. So this motion is to, in essence, verify the construction management at risk committee's work, and to approve so by the full board.
I move to approve the Board of Education of this school district should and does hereby approve and adopt the resolution as presented and attached here too with regard to the selection of the construction manager at risk for the proposed new high school facility.
Second.
Thank you, Tim. As a reminder, this resolution is the board accepting the findings and recommendation of that process. So, discussion or questions? I want to thank Mr. Aldridge for leading us competently through that process. I want to thank those parties who bid and threw their hat in. I thought the committee had great choices from which to work, and we did have community members, Doug Locker and Patrice Gardner, on the committee as well. I want to thank them again for their time in going through that process. So, any other? Jody, please call the roll.
Allison?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Valerie?
Yes.
Kara?
Yes.
Heather?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes. The result of that process is that we did have a recommendation for a construction manager. And so we would be pursuing an agreement with that construction manager, Dr. Hawk.
And the agreement is attached, and there is a lot of work to be done. Hausman Construction has already met with DLR Group and are working, and we have another meeting set this week to continue to refine, and as you'll see later on, some estimates related to the high school work, as well as other things that we have as a workshop for this evening. We do have the contract before you. This is a rather lengthy motion.
Well, I'll tackle that one then. I move that the Board of Education of this school district should and does hereby approve the construction manager at risk agreement between the school district and Hausman Construction for the proposed new high school facility in the form on file with official school district records and as presented at this meeting, or with such changes as are deemed necessary and in the best interest of the school district, and approved by the board president, and further hereby delegates authority to and authorizes and directs the board president or designee to sign, execute, and deliver the agreement, any such agreement amendments, change orders, or other documents called for in such agreement, to pay the contract sum and to take all other action necessary to carry such agreement into effect.
Second.
Thank you, Allison. I didn't mean in making the motion to sound somewhat self-serving. I would note that the selection of Hausman and this agreement, again, I think we had great firms to choose from. Hausman is certainly very competent, a firm that we've worked with previously. And there is a cost that comes with the construction manager risk contract, and Hausman's bid for that cost to serve as construction manager for the project was the lowest of the proposals. Other questions or discussion?
I don't have a question, but just wanted to thank the administration and all those who served on the construction manager risk committee. I heard in the summation that the administration provided a few of the points that this board had requested about that as an addendum to Mr. Aldridge's office good steering. And namely, just an ordered approach around the ways that we selected those and then came to a final decision. So that was great to hear in that summary, and really appreciate the care that was taken clearly in the process about that.
Thanks, Valerie. Other discussion? Jody, please call the roll.
Allison?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Valerie?
Yes.
Kira?
Yes.
Heather?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes, motion carries. Now we'll move to consideration of an agreement with DLR to proceed with the schematic design and design development phases of the second high school. Dr. Hoff.
Yes, I do want to make mention, so there is no confusion with the community, that the work that has been approved, the work that we have before us here by DLR, in no way means that we're building a second high school. The bonding for such must be approved by the community. And so there is some preliminary work. The construction management at risk process does help refine the plans, thus helps provide cost savings, time that goes along with that. But there still needs to be a vote of the community to approve bonding to move forward with the construction of a second high school. This work that we're approving tonight and the motion that you have before you this evening allows the committee, allows the district to proceed moving forward. Keep in mind that right now, 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th grade will be 9 through 12 in 2026. That number currently is 1,250. That is 100 students above capacity. That is no growth added to the district. Current numbers today have us at 100 students above capacity at the high school. So at some point in time, this district is going to have to look at accommodating that capacity today and growth in the future, and we are preparing the district to do so. So with that, we have DLR moving forward to start design. There is some cost with that. If the bond issue would fail, these designs do not go away. They would move forward as we move forward to try to do something different as the community wishes.
Thank you, Dr. Hoff.
I move to authorize the superintendent of schools to negotiate and enter into an agreement with DLR Group for schematic design and design development phases of the high school number 2 project.
I'll second.
Thank you, Valerie, and a second from Kira. Any discussion?
Do we know a cost of what this is costing, or can we?
It is attached. Now there is a percentage.
Okay.
Yes. And that cost will be paid by the district, bond issue or not.
Okay.
Because those plans are still ours.
Any other discussion? Jody, please call the roll.
Kira?
Yes.
Heather?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes,
Allison?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Valerie?
Yes.
motion carries. Now we will consider revisions to our elementary, middle school, and high school handbooks.
You have attached all of the handbooks, one for the elementary, one for the middle school. They are copies with name changes to the building and to personnel, and then certainly we have one high school. So those are attached for you. The reason we are doing this a month ahead of what we normally do is so that we can place these online as people online register, and they can answer the question, have you read the handbook as well. So an electronic notification.
I move to approve the elementary, middle school, and high school student handbooks as presented for the 2022 and 2023 school year.
Second.
Moved by Kara, seconded by Heather. Thank you. Discussion. This is the second time the board's seen these. Appreciate administration's going through them to keep them current, relevant, up to date with changes and highlighting those for the board. So, any other discussion? Jody, please call the roll.
Heather?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Allison?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Valerie?
Yes.
Kara?
Yes.
Motion carries. Now we'll review curriculum and personnel proposals for what I believe will be the final.
No, it may not be the final, but these are things that we have to do for personnel as we move forward to attract quality candidates as we move forward. As you can see, we're looking at approximately $277,000. We are already, with that 277 and the 3 rounds before that, we're looking at close to $4.8 million in new personnel and curriculum. What that results in is approximately 45 new staff members above and beyond the year before. That, in addition to the 35 resignations, puts us at about 80 new personnel certificated. We will be looking at approximately 500 employees for Bennington Public Schools when we consider certificated staff and support staff next August.
I move to accept the recommendations of the Curriculum and Mechanism Committee and the administration for 2022-23 curriculum and personnel modifications and additions as is outlined in the June 10th, 2022 report of said committee and pending the 2022-23 budget approval.
I'll second.
Moved by Valerie and seconded by Kara. Discussion. Jody, please call the roll.
Kara?
Yes.
Heather?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Allison?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Valerie?
Yes.
Motion carries. That takes us through our action items. The remainder of our new business items are informational and discussionary in nature. I did want to, before we start into those, take a bit of a break. I have us at just before the bottom of the hour here. Shall we reconvene at 6:40? 10 minutes enough? We will stand in recess then until 6:40 and we'll begin promptly at that time. district growth this evening, as well as a programming item to consider. So we'll start in this evening with a review of district growth as it relates to finances. And we have Bruce Leffler with us from Piper Sandler, who's done some analysis for us on the district's existing debt load and what the potential for additional bond issuance might look like in terms of district finances. So, Dr. Pop, do you have any other introduction? Mr. Leffler, the floor is yours. Thank you for being with us.
Appreciate it. As usual, we're passing our eyesight on most of the documents I can provide to you. What we put together here based on some information from the last time I was at the board meeting was just, we kind of started with, from an analysis standpoint, you know, we looked at projections, how much debt could the district support under its current levy, okay, under its current bond fund levy. And as we look up there, I've got scenarios, basically 3 different scenarios for all the sizing. The first one's $50 million. The second scenario goes to 100, 125 to $150 million on the far end. As we show, the district currently has approximately $175 million worth of debt that's currently outstanding for the approved bonds. Well, with an additional small bond issue still to be done from the last vote, $72 million voted election. So what I put together here is just kind of a basic analysis showing current taxable valuation, some projections as to that assessed valuation growth over time, what the debt service, how you would lever out the $100,000, $125,000, $150,000 bond issues over a 3-year period of time, how that affects the district's basic cash flow and its bond fund, and what that resulting increase in levy would mean to various and sundry taxable valuation households within the district. So as the whole problem lays out, the problem we always run into and consistently run into with the district issuance of debt or any school district, quite frankly, to that standpoint, but yours in particular, since you're in such a growth mode and have been for some amount of time, is putting on the additional debt, even in the instances where we might be doing interest only for a few years. You're building growth and waiting for that growth to catch up on a valuation standpoint by the new houses that are where we bring more kids that you're making more room for in the new school buildings, so that they're not knocking down the doors before you start building the next school building. So the biggest pinch point we always hit on any cash flow model we do is in the early years. And basically kind of across the middle of the scenario there, what I've just basically laid out is you run into a pinch point on any of these scenarios at about December of 2028 to a position where you start getting into a negative cash flow based on the existing projections. So if there's anything, and I know the district in the past has certainly provided some assistance to the bond fund, to help pay some interest on the bonds. Anything we do to increase the additional revenue that comes into the bond fund over the next 5 or 6 years is certainly advantageous to be able to get you over some of these negative positions. The other 2 things one thing I have factored into this analysis is when you do a bond issue, you certainly have the ability to additionally borrow some dollars to pay for your interest expense over the next 2 or 3 years. So that's certainly eligible for you to do. And so there is a situation in which you can add, whatever the number happens to be, $2 or $3 million to the additional, to whatever bond issue you're doing, to kind of provide you a little bit of additional cash flow. The thing that's not factored into this particular analysis is we're in an era, certainly today, which we weren't last year or any of the district's previous bond issues, where you can actually earn some interest income while your construction is going on. If you have bond proceeds in the bank, previously, any money you earned in that was very negligible, so it wasn't worth adding into the cash flow. Well, now we're seeing some positive numbers in there where interest rates, certainly benefit to your detriment is that you do have the ability, all that money sitting aside to earn some additional interest income. And we're talking about probably millions of dollars at this particular point in time on this type of size project. So there's some additional cash flow items that we haven't necessarily put in the entire model, something we can certainly dive into deeper when we narrow down what model we're working towards. But as you see, we've kind of laid out what levy, bond fund levy necessary to be increased based upon approval of bonds would be. At $150 million, we're looking at a bond fund levy that would go from 38 to 48 cents. And some of the impact that would mean to some additional housing. And as I mentioned, now we got footnotes there. In the scenario, the number 3 scenario up there, for $150 million bond issue, I put $155 million to extent. We did take additional $5 million out of bond proceeds to set aside to pay interest expenses, in the earlier years for that purpose. Now, that again, based on what your actual cash position is in the bond fund at the time you do the bond issue, and or other analysis we would do from the standpoint of investment income, that number would certainly fluctuate, but just for perspective purposes, this is what I put it from this standpoint. So some of the deciding factors on this are, you'll see, at that $150 million scenario, under number 1, we're talking about a 3.5% interest rate on bonds. You have negative position in 2028 of $2.5 million. I think that kind of goes away with some action that the board may have been taking. But anyway, the difference is if that interest rate goes to 4% on that $100 million to $50 million for the bonds, you're talking about $5.5 million differential negative position in that particular situation. So, obviously factors balance and factors move. Additionally, if we saw valuation increases that were higher than the projections we're making, that obviously is a positive to the cash flow for the school district. But what we're really trying to do here, I guess maybe to step back on the whole analysis, is when we're talking about these bond fund levies, what we're attempting to do is make that bond fund levies consistent. And this is why I'm talking about having some cash balance, having some cash cushion, if you want to call it that. Because as of right now, as an example, you're levying 38 cents in your bond fund. Your actual debt service, I think, which would be for probably the 23 school year, would actually require a bond fund levy of about 40 cents. Just because of that. But the next year when the valuation catches back up, it's 30 cents. So rather than bouncing that bond fund levy around, we've been trying to use that cash balance to help offset some of that expense so that we have a level. We're not in a situation, even under this 48 cent scenario, there are some years where the bond fund levy requirements are going to be probably 50 to 51 cents. But with the cash flow, or with some cash balance in that bond fund account, we're able to offset and make that levy somewhat stable over the period of time. Well, I guess I'd stop there and see if there's any specific questions you might have about any questions on the analysis. As we start progressing along, there's certainly additional analysis we can put together and starting to refine under certain numbers. But this, I think, gets us pretty close in the ballpark for all these different scenarios.
Bruce, thank you for that. Thank you for that summary. Always appreciate your work, and this is a bit of an art, particularly in the present times when there's a lot of variables that are changing. I think a couple things I wanted to highlight from your comments are the board's not decided what the bond recommendation may be. So we still have work to do as a body to determine what school district needs are and what we might propose to the community in terms of projects that would meet the community's needs. And the art in doing that is always evaluating. As you're planning for growth, you're asking people who are here today to pay for it, and people who are joining tomorrow participate as they build and buy homes.
I appreciate our philosophy has been for a long time to do the best job we can in matching that and not getting too ahead of ourselves on growth. If memory serves me, we've had a 38-cent levy since 2018.
It's been 5 years, I think you're correct.
Yeah, so it's been at least 4, or perhaps 5 years. So we were able to build the middle school and the elementary school without an increase to the levy, because we were fortunate in kind of planning our plans and having the growth of the district line up well with that. So with the size of the project we're contemplating with the high school, hard to do that kind of project without moving the levy. But what your scenarios do show me, at least by my interpretation, and this is maybe where a clarifying question comes in. So at a $50 million kind of level, we wouldn't be looking at an increase to the levy. Is that correct? About 30.
Based on the assumptions or projections we're making, right? There's still cash flow at that 38 cent.
And then I don't recall you having called out the growth assumptions, but it looks like next 5 years would be an 11% kind of number. And then I think Dr. Hockey probably have a better command of that. History is not always the most reliable indicator, but growth rate over the last 5 years.
Growth rate over the last 5 years is closer to 12% at this point in time. There was a number of years, 08 to 012, where growth was around 6%. It has not fallen below 5% for almost 2 decades.
And that period would have been kind of post Great Recession, right? So even in a recessionary environment, while that growth rate's lower, compared to other districts, I think 6% would still be a fairly aggressive.
Well, yeah, during that 2008 timeframe, Northwest Omaha and Sarpy County were basically in 2 areas that were still continuing to see growth. And that was Northwest as being your school district primarily. Assumptions we're making on valuation increase too are pretty consistent with what we've done over the last 5 to 10 years as well. Try to be a little bit conservative. Want to be a little bit below where they actually come in, so we get a little benefit out of it. But I think we're still trying to be pretty reasonable on those assumptions without reaching.
And then a clarifying question, more on the detail side. So high school is kind of that project would take longer to build than any project we have previously. And the spend on that's kind of lumpy, right? So I presume your analysis and your cash flow recommendations kind of account for at least to some degree the timing of that spend.
Well, that's a place where we can obviously do some additional refinement because hindsight being 2020, you vote issued all the bonds you could last year. But the reality is, there's two things at play here. Number one is trying to match up the construction time period with when you need the money, how you issue the bonds, because obviously the day you issue bonds, they start accruing interest. So you have a component there that you have to deal with. The second piece of that one, though, is interest rate risk by waiting longer to do, and there's a benefit in the short end to have less interest because that's where the pinch point is in the short time frame. But if you wait too long and you've lost a decent market, and now when interest rates are higher, you pay more back over that period of time. It's still, so there's a delicate balance there that we would want to look at and talk to, obviously, administration as well as folks you just hired to talk about what's this construction time frame, how much money is going to be needed, and the best thing we can, in a market that we know what interest rates are, the best thing you do is delay issuing bonds as long as possible so that you don't have the interest component up front. That's why you don't issue $100 million, just out of the box. Because even though you can earn interest income on that money, if you're borrowing at 4 and turning it to, you're still having an impact to you, so. It's balancing act or juggling act, as I say.
Thank you. Other questions, discussion?
I'll be talking more. Thank you very much.
Bruce again, thank you.
All right.
Our next topic is regarding high school site development. And I invite whoever from DLR would like to come up.
I think this is going to
Present
be
us.
us.
Right? Us, you have the floor.
No, I put you on the spot. So, one of the things we have to start looking at, I know this is something that's redundant for the board, but we do have to start looking at numbers in terms of growth. So when you look at facility capacity, right now the high school has 1,150 students. That's important because I told you the 4th through 7th grade has 1,250 students. So we will outgrow capacity even though we will not grow as a district in the year 26. Middle school south has 750, so does the current middle school. That's combined 1,500 students. When we add the 5 elementaries together, we get a combination of number of 2,507 students. Where do I get 483? That's 21 classrooms times 23 students. Here's the numbers. When we look at the numbers, we look up here and we see the green 10, 1, 21. That's the current enrollment. Then we add percentages. And you look all the way over to the left, you see that kindergarten is adding 6% per year above the current number. Elementaries usually add 5%, and then we have historical numbers. What we do is we average 5 years growth, and we come up with a percentage to each one of those grade levels. So as you can see, 7th grade or 6th grade goes a little bit more than anything else. So does 9th grade. And as you talk about transitioning from one system to another, those are logical positions where families would transition. So as you take those numbers out and you look at 26, 27, almost in the middle of the page, you see that you have 2,635 students. That would be above capacity for an elementary by about 130 students. Then you look at the high school, 1,513. That is close to 400 students over capacity. Now the difference there is in a high school, you typically have an 8-period day. One of those periods is a planning period by a teacher where that room is empty. Therefore, a traveling teacher can occupy that space, where in an elementary, that is not true. So you can double up some classrooms in a high school, go above capacity a little bit more than what you can in an elementary. So we're looking at trying to, with normal growth, have buildings open in 2026. What we know is that we have built an elementary, and it takes anywhere from 24 to 30 months by the time you put it on the plans, put it out on the street, and start construction. A high school, which we have built in phases, 5 phases of the current high school, takes much longer. Number one, it takes a year to go through the city planning to get permits. And number two, it takes about 3 years for construction. So we're looking at 4 years. This is 22, 26. That's why we're looking at this right now. Again, I talked about this earlier. The yellow is the 4th through 7th grade. Those 4 numbers add up to 1,250, and that is above the high school capacity. But if we were to project out in 26, 27, that is 1,513. I don't want to confuse the community with 2 different numbers. One is no growth at all, and we have them in the school right now. The other is current and expected growth. So, looking at a high school, this is what we have. These are ranges helped put together by DLR and Hausman, And we very much put Hausman under pressure here in the last couple of days to come up with some of these estimates, but they are ranges of numbers. We are in the preliminary stages of development, but this is what we're looking at in terms of square foot, in terms of the number of classrooms, whether they're large, medium, or small, whether they're gyms, some of the other things that go along with that. The core, as we look at it, is for 1,000 students. So if you take the 1,500 divided in half, if the boundaries were set just equally, which they are not, then you would have 2 high schools in that 26 of 750, and you would have a capacity of almost 1,200 and 1,000. So you would have room to grow in each. So that number is important. You're looking at 1,000 students with the core facilities being built up to 1,500. Then, the additional 500 student capacities or classrooms to add more students is about 12 to 13 million. You're looking at a pool, 8 to 9 million. And you can start to read the numbers. We're looking at a stadium. There's a lot of parts and pieces to that stadium. Keep in mind you have a competition stadium that we'll talk about even more in a little bit. But this is simply for lower level games and for different things. It's track, it's soccer, it's football, and it's many other things that go along with that. Okay? So the post-tension track, in other words, a rubberized surface track that goes along with that, baseball field, softball field. If you synthetic turf one or all of those fields, the range is anywhere from 3 to 400,000 for each of those areas. Softball field is less than a baseball field, is less than a stadium and a football field, but approximately that range for each of those. CTE, that is vocations or others. And so those classrooms typically are larger. Those classrooms have more equipment and specialized facilities that go along with that. Tennis courts, you'll see that not only in this new high school, but in the phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 of the current stadium and high school. As you can see, there are about 300,000 for 2 courts. So we're looking at 6 courts total, which equates to 900,000 or 1.2 million. And then our young adults program, an additional classroom space to go along with that. 18 to 20-year-olds, which this community has now and will continue to grow in its capacity. And then there are certainly other sites that go along with that. So we're looking at about 137 million to 151 million if all things were put in place at one time. We do not recommend all things be put in place. At the same time, we're not recommending that the board decide this evening which one of these, A through K, well, we need to do some work with our community as we move forward. That is high school 2. And as you saw, anywhere from 125 to 150 million was anywhere from 7 to 10 cents added to the levy. I wish I could stop right here. However, we have more, and we'll continue on. So elementary number 6, we do have negotiations currently going on for land around 156 and Rainwood Road. We'll talk about that in terms of contracts and executive session in terms of land deals later on. But you're looking at construction of about 20 million. There was a time when we built Pine Creek that we were all in with about 11 to 12 million total, right? So as you can see, that was in 2009 to 2022 to 26. We're doubling those costs as we move forward. But there are many different costs that go along with that. The bottom line is 27 million, 27.5 million. Now, Ms. Fagan has talked to the board in previous meetings about just a percentage of classroom space for preschool. So if you were to add the preschool addition to this elementary number 6, that would be close to $3 million in addition. There are escalating factors, escalating inflation, there's contingency monies. I made sure we put all of those things in there. Sometimes this would be a hard bid, sometimes, and we've had very good fortune in Bennington Public Schools where we've had it come under bid many, many times. And the contingency monies are very minimal. I would suggest in Anchor Point and Stratford Elementary, we used very little contingency money as we move forward. So those are numbers that you need to keep in mind. So this is the preschool addition to elementary number 6. And if you're trying to add up all of these things, don't worry, I have a slide at the end that does that for you. Okay? High school phase 2, I want to thank Stacy Hahn for helping me out with this PowerPoint presentation. What she has done is broken out and highlighted what would be in phase 2, and basically this would be on the home side, and this would be additional seating and the press box that goes along with that. So you're looking at about 1.2 to 1.3 million that would be added on to that stadium. Phase 3 is not discussed, it's not priced out. As you can see, phase 3 basically is the pink, and that would go toward the visitors side for the most part. This would take our stadium up to, with both phase 2 and phase 3, a competition stadium that would be somewhere around 5,000 spectators at one time. High school tennis courts. This is the tennis courts on the current facility. So as you can see where it's laid out, it's again amplified and highlighted for you. But this would be close to the softball field. For those of you who practiced football many, many years, there was a practice football field on this before the synthetic turf. And so it's adjacent to the softball field. This would be where we would have the tennis courts. Why 6? If you're going to do dual competition or competition of any sort, 6 is the minimum courts at one time. There are not lighting at these courts, so you're trying to get this in the spring of the year. If you're to add boys tennis, which we recommend shortly, that is in the fall of the year. And you try to get those matches and duels done before the sun sets. In order to do that, you have one single, double, and you have basically 8 courts in need. You can get it done with 6. Heritage Elementary addition. This would take Heritage Elementary up to the same as Pine Creek. Therefore, you would go from 483 at one of your elementaries up to 575. We put this there in case that the district wants to look at this down the road. Heritage, all of our elementaries, Anchor Point had the preschool, and it does today. Pine Creek has the additional classrooms, it does today. Heritage Elementary does not have the addition, but it could be the preschool or 4 additional classrooms. We would recommend that if you're building a new building, that would be a consideration for preschool because it is a different design. And existing buildings like Heritage, you would add the classroom space. In order to get that done, you would have to change some boundaries to make that accommodation more feasible for you. Now, those 4 classrooms, you simply take 4 times 23, you're looking at 92. It may help you for a year, but it's not a long-term solution in terms of your growth moving forward. Warehouse addition, if you were to go to the warehouse today, it is filled to the brim. And that has the capacity to house transportation. It is not housing any transportation that I know of at this point in time. It is simply supplies. So as you continue to grow from a 3,000 student district to next year 4,000, and not too far down the distance, 5,000 student district, you're going to need room for just simply supplies. And so recommendation is to look at addition to the warehouse. It was designed originally to have this addition go with it. And so it's very close to that road going down to the middle school. There would be some additional cost that goes along with that. I think those are built into the numbers right here, but you'd have to have a retaining wall so that you could get this warehouse in and still have that road. And we also talked about life equipment. And so you have a high school that is approaching 20 years. The original high school was built in 2005. Now, other than some apartments that I may have lived with in 1970 shag carpet, the flooring usually has a 15-year life. And so we did change that out. And so as you're looking at flooring sections 1 and 2, you're looking at 2005, it has extended its life, but if you were to go up there, the carpet does look in pretty good shape. So kudos to the maintenance, kudos to Mr. Edens and his cleaning to maintain that. But you're also looking at roof, bituminous roof or the asphalt roof has a 15-year life expectancy, and it is past its prime, and therefore you're in need of looking at some of that. So as you see, it's broken out, about $630,000 for roof repair, about $250,000 for flooring, and then we're looking at HVAC, and I got another slide to look at that. And you're looking at the air handling units and a lot of heat pumps that, again, have reached their life expectancy for that phase 1 of the high school. So you're looking at about $1.2 million for the upgrade in the equipment at the high school. And then we have about a dozen rooftop units here at Bennington Elementary. And we're looking at about $750,000 for replacement of those rooftop units. Here is the eye-popping number. And so you're looking at anywhere from about 137 million to 150 million for high school. Again, that's all parts and pieces. That's a 1,500 student with pool, stadium, everything that goes with it. And you're looking at some additional costs all the way from elementary number 6 to 3 additional pieces of land, as you're looking at elementary site 8, middle school site 3, and high school site 3. And that is close to 49 million. So if you were to put the two numbers, the high end and everything on one, you're looking at 200 million. Mr. Leffler did not give you a scenario for 200 million, but you can assume if you're going from 7 cents at 125 million to 10 cents at 150 million, you're looking at closer to 15 to 17 cents at 200 million. Okay? So, those are all the parts and pieces that we have at this point in time. Do you have any questions about the information that I've shared with you? Another?
Well, this is probably a good time to just throw it out there, and I apologize if you named it and I missed it, but is there going to be a swimming pool in the proposals?
The high school can be built with a swimming pool. That is not up to the administration. It is up to the community if they want to add that pool to it. There are many things to consider. Is the pool just for public school students? I wouldn't think so. Can you connect with a YMCA or a private entity to make that more than just a swimming pool, but more like a common grounds in Elkhorn, I think you can explore that, or you can simply say no. And right now you have accommodations of a YMCA that's about 2 to 3 miles down the road. However, that YMCA is in a public high school by OPS and will probably be annexed at some point in time by the city of Omaha. The YMCA has never closed its doors to a city or an entity, so I don't suspect that Bennington community could not use that YMCA at some point in time. I'm not trying to dance around your question, but it's certainly not something I can answer yes or no to. I think you have to go out to the community and try to get as much information as you can before the end of August for these 6 people to decide whether to put that on a bond issue or not.
To that end, what mechanisms are we employing to solicit that community input?
We have hired a firm. They have a survey ready, and we need to add some of the parts and pieces that you've heard of tonight to that. They will do a phone survey of spread across our community, which